Welcome back, dear listeners, to another chapter of 9 Lives, a Felidian Tale. I'm Owen, your storyteller for this magical journey, and I'm thrilled to have you join us again. Tonight, we find ourselves drawn deeper into the heart of Felidia, where ancient secrets and hidden powers lie waiting to be uncovered. In the previous chapter, Finn and his companions sought refuge in an ancient shrine, finding solace from the dangers of the night. The forest around them was alive with whispers, and the air seemed to hum with a mysterious energy. Now, as they prepare to continue their journey, the mountain itself begins to speak. Tonight's chapter is called The Mountain's Song. It's a tale of echoing sounds that resonate through the air, of wolves that watch from the shadows, and of the subtle magic that binds the land together. As Finn listens to the mountain's call, he will begin to understand that there is more to this journey than meets the eye. So, find a comfortable spot, let your worries drift away, and allow the magic of Felidia to guide you into a world of adventure and wonder. Close your eyes, take a deep breath, and let the story carry you as we begin Chapter 7, The Mountain's Song. The cool, clear night had settled around the shrine like a comforting blanket. The party, having completed the ritual and received their protective elixir, was nestled inside the small stone structure. The flickering light of the fire cast long dancing shadows on the ancient walls, and the rhythmic crackling of the flames was a soothing counterpoint to the whispering wind outside. Finn lay in his bedroll, staring up at the rough-hewn ceiling. His thoughts drifted over the events of the day, the discovery of the shrine, the gathering of the plants, and the successful completion of the ritual. He felt a growing sense of accomplishment. He was learning so much about this strange new world, and each day seemed to bring new challenges and insights. Just as he was about to drift off to sleep, a sound reached his ears, a low, guttural growl, followed by the soft pad of paws on the earth outside. Finn's ears perked up, his eyes wide with sudden alertness. He wasn't the only one who heard it. Thornwhisker, the warrior of their group, was already on his feet, his hand resting on the hilt of his sword. His amber eyes narrowed, scanning the darkness beyond the entrance of the shrine. "Stay quiet," Thornwhisker murmured, his voice barely a whisper. "There's something out there." The others stirred, waking from their light slumber. Willowshade, the mage, moved closer to the fire, her violet eyes filled with concern. Lyric, the bard, and Brightpaw, the ranger, crept toward the entrance, their movements silent and cautious. Finn's heart pounded in his chest as he reached for his hammer, but then his eyes fell on the iron skillet he used for cooking. He grabbed it instead, clutching the handle tightly, his knuckles turning white. The skillet felt solid and reassuring in his hand, a makeshift shield against whatever lurked in the shadows. Outside, the growling grew louder, joined by the soft rustling of leaves and the snapping of twigs. The wolves were circling, their movements stealthy but unmistakable. Finn could see the flicker of their eyes in the darkness, reflecting the firelight. The wolves were large, their fur dark and bristling, blending almost seamlessly with the night. Their eyes gleamed with a hungry, predatory light. Thornwhisker stepped forward, placing himself between the entrance and the rest of the group. Finn moved to his side, holding the skillet defensively. Thornwhisker glanced at him, a flicker of surprise in his eyes, but he gave a small nod of approval. "Stay close," Thornwhisker whispered. "We'll keep them at bay." Finn nodded, swallowing the lump in his throat. He felt a mix of fear and determination. The wolves were close, their presence palpable, like a dark, looming shadow. Willowshade, her voice calm and steady, began to whisper an incantation, her hands moving in slow, deliberate motions. The fire in the center of the shrine flared up, casting a brighter light, pushing the shadows back. The wolves hesitated, their growls growing more cautious. "Lyric, Brightpaw, into the shrine," Thornwhisker commanded quietly. "Help Willowshade set up a barrier." The bard and ranger nodded, retreating into the safety of the shrine's walls. Lyric's lute was in his hands, his fingers strumming a soft, melodic tune that mingled with Willowshade's magic. The notes floated in the air, soothing and calming, creating a sense of safety within the shrine. Brightpaw moved to the back of the shrine, where he could keep an eye on the entrance and draw his bow if needed. Finn stood his ground beside Thornwhisker, his eyes never leaving the dark shapes moving just beyond the firelight. The wolves circled, their movements slow and deliberate, testing the defenses of the party. Their eyes shone with a cold, intelligent light, and their growls sent shivers down Finn's spine. The fire burned brightly, its warmth a comforting barrier against the encroaching darkness. But the wolves were persistent. They edged closer, their growls growing bolder, their hunger palpable. Thornwhisker's grip tightened on his sword. "If they come any closer, we'll have to drive them back," he murmured to Finn. "Be ready." Finn nodded, his heart racing. The skillet in his hand felt heavy, but he held it firmly, ready to swing if needed. He took a deep breath, trying to steady his nerves. The wolves advanced, their eyes fixed on the two felinids standing before them. Their growls grew louder, more aggressive. Thornwhisker raised his sword, ready to strike. But before he could, the wolves stopped, sniffing the air. They turned their heads, drawn by the scent of the food the party had left outside, the bread and cheese Stoneclaw had given them. With a final warning growl, the wolves backed away, turning their attention to the provisions. They tore into the food, their teeth gnashing and growls muffled by their feast. Thornwhisker and Finn watched, ready to act if the wolves turned back toward them. But the wolves seemed content with their meal. Once the food was gone, they slunk back into the shadows, their eyes glowing in the darkness. One by one, they disappeared into the night, their presence fading like a bad dream. Finn let out a breath he didn't realize he had been holding. Thornwhisker lowered his sword, his muscles relaxing slightly. "They're gone," he said quietly. "For now." The group remained on high alert for a while longer, but the wolves did not return. Slowly, they allowed themselves to relax, knowing the night would hold no further surprises. They retreated into the shrine, the warmth of the fire and the comforting presence of their friends a balm to their frayed nerves. "They were only after the food," Willowshade said, her voice thoughtful. "But they're still out there. We should be cautious." Finn nodded, his grip on the skillet loosening. He felt a rush of relief mixed with a lingering unease. The wolves were gone, but the memory of their eyes and growls remained. The party settled in for the night, staying close to the fire, its light and warmth a reassuring presence in the dark. The next morning dawned clear and cool, the early light filtering through the trees around the shrine. Dew sparkled on the grass and the air was crisp and refreshing. Finn and his companions packed up their camp, moving with a sense of purpose. The memory of the wolves was fresh in their minds, a reminder of the dangers that lurked in the forest. "We should head up the mountain," Thornwhisker said, his voice firm. "The shrine protected us last night, but we can't stay here forever. We need to keep moving." The others nodded in agreement. With their packs slung over their shoulders and the elixir from the shrine securely in their pouches, they set off along the winding path that led up the mountain. The terrain was rough, the path narrow and rocky, but they moved with determination, their steps steady. Brightpaw and Willowshade took the lead, their eyes scanning the ground for signs of food. The forest was abundant, offering berries, nuts, and the occasional small game. They gathered what they could, filling their packs with enough to keep them fed for the day. As they walked, Lyric fell into step beside Finn, his lute slung across his back. The bard's silver-blue fur caught the light, his bright amber eyes sparkling with mischief. He smiled at Finn, his expression warm and inviting. "How are you holding up, Finn?" Lyric asked, his voice light. "That was quite the show of bravery last night, standing up to those wolves." Finn shrugged, a shy smile tugging at his lips. I didn't want them to get any closer. I'm not really brave, just scared." Lyric laughed softly. "Being brave isn't about not being scared. It's about doing what you have to do, even when you are scared. You did well. I'm impressed." Finn's cheeks warmed at the compliment. He had always admired Lyric's confidence and easy charm. "Thanks," he said, glancing at the ground. "I just didn't want anyone to get hurt." Lyric nodded, his expression thoughtful. "And that's what makes you brave, Finn. You care about others. That's a rare quality." They walked in comfortable silence for a while, the forest around them alive with the sounds of birds and rustling leaves. The path wound higher, the trees thinning out to reveal glimpses of the mountain peak. The air grew cooler, the scent of pine and earth filling their senses. "Have you ever been to the Harvest Festival in Thornvale?" Lyric asked suddenly, breaking the silence. "It's a sight to behold. Music, dancing, feasts that last for days. The whole town is decorated with lanterns and flowers. It's like stepping into a dream." Finn shook his head. "I've never heard of it. What's it like?" Lyric's eyes lit up as he launched into a description of the festival. "The Harvest Festival is the biggest celebration in Thornvale, a town far to the east of here. It happens every year, just as the leaves begin to turn. People from all over Felidia come to join in the festivities. There are games and contests, musicians from every corner of the land, and enough food to feed an army." Finn listened, captivated by Lyric's vivid storytelling. He could almost see the colorful lanterns swaying in the breeze, hear the laughter of the townsfolk, and taste the delicious food. Lyric's words painted a picture of joy and community, a welcome distraction from the challenges of their journey. "But the best part," Lyric continued, his voice lowering conspiratorially, "is the fire dance. Every night, as the sun sets, the dancers take to the square, spinning and twirling, their movements casting shadows in the firelight. It's said that the dance is a tribute to the fire spirits that bless the harvest, ensuring a bountiful season. The flames dance with them, rising and falling in time with the music. It's a sight that stays with you forever." Finn smiled, his imagination filled with images of the fire dance. "That sounds amazing. Maybe we could go there someday?" Lyric grinned. "Maybe we will. There's a whole world out there, Finn, just waiting to be explored. We'll have plenty of adventures yet." Their conversation was interrupted by a low, distant growl. Finn's ears perked up, his eyes scanning the forest. The sound was faint, but unmistakable. The wolves were still following them. He exchanged a glance with Lyric, their expressions turning serious. "We need to keep moving," Lyric said quietly, his voice losing its usual cheer. "They're still out there." The party quickened their pace, their senses alert. The path grew steeper, the terrain more rugged. Rocks jutted out from the ground, and roots twisted underfoot, making the going slow and treacherous. The wind picked up, rustling the leaves and carrying the faint scent of rain. As the sun began to dip lower in the sky, the group found a small cave set into the mountainside. It was shallow but offered enough space for them to take shelter. The entrance was narrow, making it easy to defend, and the surrounding rocks provided cover. "This will do for the night," Thornwhisker said, his voice tinged with relief. "We'll take turns keeping watch." The party settled in, preparing a small meal from the food Brightpaw and Willowshade had gathered. The atmosphere was subdued, the memory of the wolves and the ever-present sense of being watched hanging over them. Finn ate quietly, his mind drifting back to the events of the day. The ringing in his ears, a faint hum he had barely noticed earlier, had grown more persistent. It was like a distant bell, its sound just on the edge of his awareness, growing louder with each passing hour. Thornwhisker took the first watch, his figure a dark silhouette against the mouth of the cave. The others settled into their bedrolls, their bodies weary from the day's travel. Finn lay down, but sleep was elusive. The ringing in his ears made it hard to relax, the sound filling his mind. After a while, Finn gave up trying to sleep and moved to sit beside Thornwhisker at the entrance of the cave. The warrior glanced at him, a knowing look in his eyes. "Can't sleep?" he asked quietly. Finn shook his head. "There's this ringing. I can't get it out of my head." Thornwhisker nodded, his expression serious. "I've heard it too. It's faint, but it's there. Something's not right on this mountain." They sat in silence for a moment, listening to the wind rustling through the trees and the distant howls of wolves. Thornwhisker's gaze was steady, his presence a reassuring anchor in the darkness. "You did well today, Finn," Thornwhisker said after a while, "standing with me against the wolves, ready to fight with whatever you had. That takes courage." Finn looked down at the skillet in his hands, a small smile tugging at his lips. I didn't want them to get past us. I didn't want anyone to get hurt." Thornwhisker nodded. "That's a good instinct. Protecting those around you, standing up to danger even when you're scared. That's what makes a warrior. It's not about being fearless. It's about doing what's right, even when it's hard. Finn glanced up at Thornwhisker, admiration in his eyes. You're brave. You always know what to do. Thornwhisker chuckled softly. I've had more years to learn, that's all. You've got the makings of a fine warrior, Finn. You've got heart, and that's what matters most. Finn's eyes widened with surprise. Really? Really? Thornwhisker affirmed. If you're willing, I can teach you. A hammer and a shield can be a powerful combination. With some training, you could protect yourself and others. It would suit you. Finn felt a surge of excitement. The idea of learning from Thornwhisker, of becoming stronger and more capable, filled him with determination. I'd like that, he said earnestly. I want to learn. Thornwhisker nodded, a faint smile on his lips. Then we'll start when we have the chance. For now, get some rest. We've got a long journey ahead of us. He paused, and a thoughtful expression crossed his face. I remember a time when I was no older than you, Thornwhisker began, his voice softening. I was on my first real patrol outside my village. We were tasked with clearing out a group of bandits that had been troubling the area. I was terrified, but I didn't show it. I kept my fear hidden, thinking that was what bravery meant. We found the bandits near an old bridge. The fight broke out, and in the chaos I saw one of the bandits draw a bow aiming at my friend. Without thinking, I jumped in front of the arrow. It hit my shield, the impact knocking me off my feet. Finn listened, his eyes wide. What happened next? Thornwhisker smiled faintly. My friend managed to disarm the bandit while I was on the ground. We were both safe, but my shield had a dent that I've kept to this day. It wasn't the fearless warriors who saved the day, but a young felonid who was scared out of his wits but didn't want his friend to get hurt. That's when I learned that true bravery is about protecting others, even when you're scared. Especially when you're scared. Finn looked down at his skillet, feeling a new sense of purpose. Thornwhisker's story resonated with him, the lesson clear. Bravery wasn't about being fearless. It was about doing what was right, even in the face of fear. Finn returned to his bedroll, the ringing in his ears still there, but somehow less intrusive. He felt a sense of purpose, a new path opening before him. Thornwhisker believed in him, and that belief gave him strength. As he closed his eyes, he let the sounds of the night lull him into a light, restless sleep. The next morning, the party resumed their ascent, the mountain looming above them, its peak shrouded in mist. The path was steep and narrow, winding through rocky terrain. The air was crisp and cold, the wind biting at their faces. As they climbed, the ringing in Finn's ears grew more persistent, a constant, nagging presence that made it hard to focus. The weather took a turn for the worse as they climbed higher. Clouds gathered overhead, dark and ominous, casting a shadow over the mountain. Rain began to fall, a light drizzle at first, then growing heavier. The path turned muddy, the rocks slick with moisture, making the going slow and treacherous. Finn's muscles ached with the effort of climbing, his paws slipping on the wet ground. The others were equally weary, their expressions tense and strained. The ringing in Finn's ears seemed to mirror the growing unease in the group, a constant reminder of the unseen forces at play. As they trudged along the muddy path, tempers began to fray. The persistent ringing, the fatigue, and the pressure of the journey wore on them. Voices were raised, sharp words exchanged. Thornwhisker's normally calm demeanor was strained, and even Lyric's usual cheer was absent. The argument started over something small, a disagreement about which direction to take, but quickly escalated. Lyric and Brightpaw clashed over the best path to follow, each convinced they knew the way. Willowshade tried to mediate, but her words were drowned out by the growing tension. Thornwhisker's patience wore thin, his voice rising as he tried to impose order. "We don't have time for this," Thornwhisker snapped, his amber eyes flashing. "We need to stick together and move forward." Lyric turned to Thornwhisker, his ears flat against his head, his tail lashing in frustration. "You're not the only one who can make decisions, Thornwhisker. We all have a say in this." Finn watched the argument unfold, the ringing in his ears growing louder. He felt a wave of dizziness wash over him, the sound filling his head, making it hard to think. He wanted to say something, to calm everyone down, but the noise was overwhelming. Suddenly, From the shadows of the trees, a low growl cut through the argument. The party fell silent, their attention snapping back to the present. The wolves were back, their eyes gleaming in the dim light, their bodies tense and ready to spring. "Move!" Thornwhisker shouted, drawing his sword. "Up the hill, now!" The party bolted, their feet slipping on the wet ground as they scrambled up the incline. Finn's heart pounded in his chest, his breath coming in ragged gasps. The ringing in his ears was deafening now, a high-pitched wail that drowned out everything else. His vision blurred, the world spinning around him. As they climbed, the ringing seemed to grow stronger, resonating through Finn's entire body. It was as if the sound was not just in his ears, but vibrating through his bones, each step sending shockwaves of sound through him. His head throbbed, his vision narrowing to a tunnel of darkness. They reached a cluster of rocks near the top of the hill, their surfaces slick with rain. Finn stumbled, catching himself against the cold stone. The wolves were close, their growls echoing in the mist. The ringing was unbearable, filling Finn's mind, blocking out all thought. Thornwhisker reached out, grabbing Finn's arm and pulling him up onto the rocks. "Come on, Finn. We're almost there." Finn nodded, his head pounding, the ringing a constant, agonizing presence. He followed Thornwhisker, his movements sluggish, his limbs heavy. The rocks offered some protection, their jagged surfaces making it difficult for the wolves to follow. The party clambered up, finding a narrow ledge where they could catch their breath. The wolves circled below, their eyes glowing in the gloom, their growls a low, menacing rumble. Finn leaned against the rock, his chest heaving, the ringing in his ears louder than ever. It felt as though the sound was inside him, resonating with his very being, pushing against his consciousness. With a final desperate effort, Finn pulled himself onto the ledge, collapsing against the cold stone. The wolves hesitated, their advance slowed by the rough terrain. Finn leaned against the rock, his head spinning, the ringing in his ears reaching a crescendo. It was as if the mountain itself was singing a dark, discordant song, the sound pulsing through him. Then everything went black. When Finn opened his eyes, he found himself lying on a soft bedroll inside a small, warmly lit shrine. The gentle flicker of the fire cast a golden glow across the stone walls, and the soothing scent of herbs filled the air. Willowshade was sitting beside him, her expression soft and calm, her violet eyes reflecting the firelight. "Hey there, Finn," she said with a small, comforting smile. "Welcome back. How are you feeling?" Finn blinked, taking in his surroundings. His head felt a bit heavy, and there was a dull echo of the ringing in his ears. But it was fading. I think I'm okay," he said, his voice steady but a little weak. "What happened?" Willowshade leaned back slightly, still keeping her gaze on him. "You had a bit of a scare, that's all. The sound, whatever it was, hit you pretty hard. But you're safe now. We're all safe here in the shrine." Finn sat up slowly, relieved that the dizziness had subsided. His eyes traveled around the shrine, settling on the familiar faces of his companions. Brightpaw was gently stirring a pot of soup over the fire, the comforting smell of herbs wafting through the air. Thornwhisker stood by the entrance, his posture relaxed as he kept a watchful eye on the surroundings. Finally, Finn's gaze fell on Lyric, lying quietly on a bedroll, his face peaceful, as if he were simply sleeping. His chest rose and fell with steady breaths. Finn's heart eased a little at the sight. "Lyric," Finn began, his voice tinged with concern. "He's okay," Willowshade assured him quickly, her voice soft and soothing. "He's just resting." The sound seemed to have a stronger effect on him too, and he passed out for a bit on our way here. "But he's breathing steadily now, and I think he just needs some time to wake up. Like you, he's probably just exhausted." Finn nodded, feeling a wave of relief. He looked back at Willowshade, a question in his eyes. "Do you know why that sound affected us like that?" Willowshade shook her head gently. "I'm not sure, Finn. It's a mystery. Maybe it has to do with the magic in the area, or maybe it's just the mountain's way of testing us. But right now, what's important is that we're safe. The shrine's magic is protecting us, and we have time to rest and recover." Finn took a deep breath, feeling the warmth of the fire seep into his bones. He glanced over at Lyric again, his worry easing as he watched his friend's chest rise and fall in a steady rhythm. Knowing that Lyric was safe and resting gave him a sense of calm. "We'll stay here until we're all feeling stronger," Willowshade continued, her voice soothing. "The shrine is a good place for us to gather our strength. There's no rush. We'll take things one step at a time." Finn lay back down, feeling the softness of the bedroll beneath him. The gentle hum of the shrine's protective magic was like a lullaby, wrapping around him, keeping the lingering echoes of the sound at bay. As his eyes grew heavy, he allowed himself to relax, knowing that for now they were safe. He closed his eyes, the warmth of the fire and the quiet presence of his friends comforting him. The last thing he heard before sleep took him was the soft crackle of the fire, a sound that promised brighter days ahead.